Thank you, everyone, and welcome to our TABMA and Hardware Australia members and guests, and a special thank you to our panellists who are with us today as well. We all understand how difficult it is to find and retain young people, and we wanted to share what TABMA can do to assist your business. I'd now like to introduce you to our panellists. So from TABMA Australia, we have Peter Anderson, who is our General Manager of TABMA Apprentices and Trainees. Peter joined TABMA in November last year with a wealth of knowledge and experience in working with trainees and apprentices and recruitment. Welcome, Pete.
Thank you.
Katie Cook-Pearce is TABMA's Senior Recruitment Specialist. She's been with TABMA since 2019, coming from the vocational education sector, and has placed many trainees and apprentices in our members' businesses. If there's anyone more passionate about recruiting trainees and apprentices, I'd be very surprised. Welcome, Kat. We've also got Darren Hooper, who is one of TABMA's senior field officers based in Queensland. He joined the team in December last year, having worked with trainees and apprentices previously, and has cemented great relationships with his trainees and apprentices and host employers, with mentoring a big focus to ensure his trainees and apprentices make it to the completion date, which isn't an easy task. We've also got Glen Quince, who is New South Wales State Manager for Simmonds Lumber and a past TABMA trainee. Glen believes in the training model and currently employs trainees in Simmonds Lumber. Thanks for joining us, Glen. And we'll also hear from David Hennessy, who is also from Simmonds Lumber, New South Wales, and has recently completed a dual traineeship and was a finalist in this year's TABMA Trainee of the Year. Thank you all panellists for joining us today. I'm now going to hand you over to Peter Anderson, who is going to give you an overview of TABMA Apprentices and Trainees and how the TABMA GTO operation works. Thank you.
Thanks, Alicia, and thank you everyone for joining us this afternoon. So, as Alicia mentioned, I'm going to just give you a pretty brief overview of TABMA Australia and our apprenticeships and traineeships arm, and a bit of an insight into what group training is, because the group training's been described as being one of the great unknown jewels of the Australian vocational education and training sector. A lot of people don't quite understand what we do, so I'll take you very briefly through that and give you a little bit of an insight into that industry. TABMA, the Timber and Building Materials Association of Australia, we've been around for 81 years, I believe. So a very long-term industry association that has evolved and grown over those years. Essentially, it's a member organisation, and it represents the timber and building material merchants, suppliers, timber importers, wholesalers right across Australia. Most businesses that are involved with timber or hardware or construction in some fashion can be part of the TABMA group. Our arm of TABMA, TABMA Apprentices and Trainees, well, that's what we're here about this afternoon. We're a group training organisation. We provide opportunities for apprentices and trainees to get a start in the timber, construction, hardware, retail industries, and we do that through that group training operation. We work with other industry and associations and government to build those opportunities for predominantly young people to gain that foothold. And one of the parts of the TABMA Constitution that we work towards is addressing the demand for the chronic shortage of skilled and qualified people in the timber and hardware industries. And most of you who are with us this afternoon would be well aware of that shortage of qualified and skilled people to come up through the ranks in the industry. So through all of that, we essentially what we do is supply the marketplace with passionate and enthusiastic apprentices and trainees, and assist in addressing these shortages. And we do that through the skilled people that we have internally that work with our host employers and our apprentices and trainees every day. And in those placements of these apprentices and trainees, our field team work to provide them with a professional and safe environment and to mentor them through their qualification. So I've mentioned group training organisation a lot. What is that? a group training organisation, or a GTO as we refer to them. The training industry has so many acronyms, it's not funny, GTO being one of them. I describe it as being labour hire with a conscience. So essentially what we do is provide a labour hire service of apprentices and trainees, but we do it with a heightened level of awareness that these are unskilled, predominantly young people coming into an industry who are undertaking a qualification to learn the skills, to learn the knowledge, and to learn the industry that they're participating in. So we employ apprentices and trainees. Right now, TABMA employ around about 135 apprentices and trainees, and we place them with host employers. Great host employers like Simmonds, and we have Glen here today, who take the apprentice and trainee and provide the on-the-job practical skills that they need to become professionals. And we partner with registered training organisations to provide the off-the-job training. And through the term of that qualification, we work with the host employer and with the RTO, the training organisation, and sometimes with schools, if it's a school-based apprentice, and with their parents to get the young person to achieve their qualification. So, put really simply, we match candidates to the host employer. Host employer says, I need somebody for this role, and our wonderful recruitment team finds the appropriate person. We work with the RTO to make sure that the qualification that they are undertaking is appropriate and that they can manage the work that's involved in it. We make sure that the apprentice and trainee are paid correctly for the work they do every day, and we have a very professional payroll team in what we call the back office who take care of that. And we mentor and guide and assist the apprentice in any way that we possibly can to achieve that qualification. So what can we do for your businesses? And most of you who are joining us here today are involved in a timber or hardware business. We can undertake a very professional and targeted recruitment process. We can select the qualification. We can assist with developing a training and career development plan. We provide the payroll and HR services, WHS services. We provide a supported, dedicated field officer to support you and the apprentice and trainee, and we visit on site regularly to make sure that everything is going as it should through the qualification. So, what qualifications are we talking about here? All apprenticeships and traineeships come under the banner of Australian apprenticeships, and they're all accredited training programs to achieve a qualification, a formal qualification. These are just some of the apprenticeships and traineeships that we work with host employers and apprentices and trainees to get them through. They're not in any particular order. They're not in the order of the most popular or anything like that. But we can work across any qualification that is suitable for your business. So it might be a saw doctoring for a sawmill, and we're recruiting some saw doctors in Port Macquarie right now. Might be a wood machinist. It might be a frame and truss manufacturer or design that you're looking for. We can assist you in all of those. And some of these qualifications are really difficult to find appropriate people for, and Kat will talk about that very shortly, the strategies that we use. One of the things that we've introduced this year or formalised the introduction of this year is what we call our Professional and Leaders Program, which is a dual certificate program. And we're fortunate that David Hennessy is joining us this afternoon. He'll talk a little bit about that later. David's finished a dual certificate program, and essentially that's a Certificate 3 qualification leading into an appropriate Certificate 4 qualification. So it might be that the young person's doing the Certificate 3 in timber building product supply, used to be timber merchandising, and whilst they're doing that qualification, our field officers like Darren identify their core skills and where they might be suited for in the industry, and they'll roll into a Certificate 4 appropriate for those skills. In David's case, if I remember correctly, and he'll no doubt correct me if I'm wrong, I think he went into a Certificate 4 in leadership and management. But it might be somebody who is sales orientated, or logistics, or it could even be IT orientated, the certificate for. So a bit of an example there for you of what we can do in that regard. And of course, that black screen came up and took me by surprise. So that's TABMA, and that's TABMA Apprentices and Trainees, and what a group training organisation is and how we can help you.
Excellent. Thanks, Pete. And we operate all over Australia, don't we?
We do indeed. There's no limits to where Darren will go to look after the apprentices and trainees. And might I say, and I do touch on this later, I think, but if I don't, we don't charge any extra. So if a business is in Nhulunbuy or Alice Springs or Coober Pedy, 3 of my favourite places in Australia, the cost is exactly the same as if they were in Sydney or Brisbane or Melbourne, for that matter, if anybody is in Melbourne.
Excellent. All right, thank you. The next section is where we're going to have a little chat to Glen, and Pete's got some questions that he's going to interview Glen and get Glen's experience, because it's always great to hear from our host employers and put it into context how it can fit into your business.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us this afternoon, Glen.
No problems.
I'll put my Mike Willesee or Ray Martin hat on. So, Glen, real briefly, you were a TABMA trainee or a cadet, I think it was called back in them days. Real quick, what brought you into it, and how did that sort of get you started?
So I started out doing a traineeship. I'll actually go back a step further. I left school, went to university for a year, didn't enjoy what I was doing. Was given an ultimatum by my father to go and find a job. So I stumbled across an ad for a traineeship and ended up going through that process with TABMA and found a traineeship with Harper Timbers, which were based at Rouse Hill at the time. So I was given an opportunity there and started off doing a traineeship with them for 12 months, working through different parts of the yards, working the yard, and then learning from there.
Mm-hmm. And had you envisaged going into the timber industry at that point, or was it just something you sort of fell into?
I was trying to get into the building industry, and it wasn't sort of what I wanted. So it was an opportunity came up within the timber industry, and it's one of those industries, once you're into it, it's very hard to get out of. It's pretty, what's the word for it? Incestuous in the way that it gets you into it and you get hooked to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I understand. Doing the traineeship, Glen, how did that help your career? Because I know from previous discussions with you, you went on to further education from there. The traineeship was sort of the starter for all that?
Yeah, that was the start. So I was given an opportunity to learn different parts of the business from when I started out, I was tailing out behind a bandsaw and a milling saw or dresser. Worked my way through there to doing timber orders. And then Harper's at the time had a front and truss plan as well. So then I went in, learned facets of that business, went into being a truss cutter, and then did some detailing of frames and trusses as well. So any opportunities that were sort of given to me, I looked at it and tried to learn as much as I could while I was there.
Mm-hmm. And you went on from there and worked your way through Harper's and then on to Simmonds?
Worked my way through Harper's, did a bit of job hopping for a little while, working for another front and truss plant as a truss cutter. Then ended up in the wholesale side of things by chance and worked my way through the wholesale, learning from internal sales through there. And then from there to be a rep on the road, did a number of years repping and then been with Simmonds for quite a while, and opportunity came here to step into the state manager's role.
Mm-hmm. So from a trainee to a state manager, it's safe to say that traineeship really was the base from which your career jumped.
Pretty much, yeah. It gave me an opportunity, gave me a start, and gave me an opportunity to show that I wasn't just a yard hand, so to speak, working the yard. There was more to what I was learning and what I was trying to do, sort of thing. So there was a bit more opportunity given to me because of that. Mm-hmm. And also through what TABMA were doing for me, I was able to progress a little bit quicker than some of the other people, which gave me more opportunities.
Yeah. So let's move forward to, you're now a host employer. Simmonds has TABMA trainees in the yard and office most of the time. Why do you choose to continue to use TABMA?
It gave me an opportunity for starters, and unfortunately this industry lacks a lot of youth coming through, or younger people coming through. So I'm pretty keen to try and bring more, the next generation through, so to speak, within the industry. If we don't have that, then unfortunately this industry suffers and we don't have that knowledge flow on from there. So if I can do that by bringing people through my business to try and develop not only Simmonds but the industry itself, then that's beneficial to us all as far as I'm concerned. It keeps the industry alive.
Yeah, no, wonderful. Thank you, Glenn. I appreciate your insights there and your candor in what you've been through yourself.
Yep.
I guess just to wrap up with our discussion with you, one of the cornerstones of group training and what we do is the field officers. George, who looks after you, comes out and visits regularly. What benefit do you find in that?
The trainees are looked after by them. So while we're the host employer and we see them on a daily basis, any of those extra things that are needed for the trainees, the host employer, or so the guys like George actually come out and look after and sort all those things for those guys for us. So they make sure they've got the equipment they need, the shoes, safety equipment, anything like that may be needed for those sort of things. Any assistance they need with their training, they'll help them through those sort of things. So that's all pretty much looked after by TABMA for the trainees, and makes us a lot easier. We don't have to worry too much about that.
Yeah.
So which is great. Makes things a lot easier.
Great. Thank you, Glenn.
No problems.
Back to you, Alicia. I've wanted to say that for years like that.
Thanks very much, Glenn. It's great to see proof that the TABMA model works from both yourself and now as an employer in the industry. Next, we're going to hear from Kat, who will inform us of where today's recruiting is at, its challenges, and what TABMA is doing to overcome these challenges, which, Kat, there are many, I know.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Alicia. All right, I'm just going to share my screen with everyone, so hopefully you'll be able to see that. Oh, great. Excellent. Everyone can see that okay? Fantastic. All right. So today I'm just going to go through with you, just in regards to TABMA's recruitment process, what we do to promote jobs within the timber industry, and also, of course, discuss some of the challenges that we do face as well. All righty. So currently with the market, I'm pretty sure we've all heard, can't find good young people, can't find people at all. There's a skill shortage out there as well. And, recruitment takes such a long time. I understand, having done recruitment for almost a decade now, I understand that it really does take a lot of time to find those good people. It's everything from, people not picking up the phone when you try to call them, to, scheduling your time to interview them, to having people not show up at their interviews, long decision making, the candidate having too many offers on the table at once and is just waiting for the person to make a higher offer, things like that. And it could be that, you've got positions within your organization that are so niche within your operations that you just can't find that person. So yes, we're certainly not immune to what's happening at the moment. It does take a lot of time, effort, patience from myself and our lovely recruitment assistant, Bianca, and our field officers, but we never stop searching for those young people. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about how you can rethink your recruitment strategy and how TABMA can actually assist with bringing in apprentices and trainees to your business. So firstly, when looking for a new trainee or apprentice, don't fixate on skill level. I know there's a lot of, it's every time someone has a job that they want to fill, they basically write down exactly what they want them to do. And there's this big long list of, would like to have and all that. But the reality is that the longer that list gets, the harder it is to find people. So think about it this way: attitude is everything and aptitude can be taught. So it's really important from the day one that person's going to fit in with your team. They've got the right attitude, and, they're just going to gel really well. Because I feel that you can train people, and you can train people quite easily. You would have remembered what it was like when you were starting to, and, it just takes guidance, experience, mentorship to, become the true professional that everyone can be. Think outside the box. So is it time your company could diversify? And diversity comes in all sorts of shapes and sizes. New perspectives do bring a breath of fresh air to your business. So just have a look, see what you feel your team might be missing. And of course, it might be the case of maybe it is time to bring in some young women who are really keen to get into the timber industry and that. And so just think about it like that, and how your role can actually ease them into that process as well. Make sure you've spoken to your team as well. So before any apprentice or trainee starts, make sure you've actually had a bit of a team meeting. Tell your current staff members who'll be working with them that they are training. They're going to need guidance. They're going to feel like they have people they can rely on to ask questions. So I really recommend having a buddy system. So, if the supervisor has to address something else and can't spend, all the time with the trainee in their first couple of days, arrange that buddy system. Have someone who can sit with them during lunch and do all that, and just make them feel really welcome. And I think also provide a really professional and safe working environment for apprentices and trainees. And this is where TABMA can assist as well. If you're unsure about onboarding, definitely let us know. Our field officers and myself, we all have experience in successful onboarding processes. So if you're really thinking, oh, I'd really like a hand in that, let us know, because we can help you develop an onboarding system, not just for apprentices or trainees, but you might actually want to do that from now on with any staff that you take on. And I think it's also really important when you're training someone to explain to them why they're doing it, not just show them what to do and tell them to do it, but explain to them why it's important that they're doing that job. And that will make them feel like an integral part of your team, that they're contributing. All right, so how can TABMA help? And, Pete's covered this a bit, but I'll just go over it a bit more. We will carefully match candidates to the host employer through a full interview process. Now, as someone who has, my whole career in recruitment has been with apprenticeships and traineeships. So I do specialize in this area. And what I found is, it's very different to interview an apprentice or trainee to what it is to interview a skilled person. And that's because you can't tick boxes with them. You actually have to educate them as you're talking. We meet many young people who might know what a carpentry apprenticeship is, or might know what an electrician does, or a plumber. But there are so many opportunities out there, and they just haven't really been they haven't been educated until this point. So a lot of our process is actually providing information, telling them about what the duties will be, what the outcomes can be, and getting them excited and engaged. And we all, we have our challenges, like everyone else. Like I said, we're not immune to it, but I like to think that we do, we do work very carefully in making sure we provide the best candidates out there for your business. So we promote your opportunities through social media, schools, job boards, and more. So we just don't whack an ad up on Seek, for example. We actually use specialised job boards to attract apprentices and trainees. We're very active on social media. We have a very active calendar. And we also contact schools to talk about the positions as well. So we do a variety of things. We're always on the lookout. So, and we do our best to prepare the candidates about your role and encourage them to do research about your business as well, which is really important. Now, you have to remember young people can get quite nervous. So they might have spent all night researching about your business, and they get to the interview the next day and their mind has blanked. And that can happen. That can happen with highly skilled people as well. Sometimes you just feel really nervous. But we do try to provide them with plenty of information up front just to ease them in and encourage them to share it with their parents, for example. So we will mentor, guide and assist the apprentice or trainee from the interview process all the way through to completion. So I know as a recruiter that you can't rely on the candidate to ask you every 5 minutes what you're being up to. You've got to keep contacting them and finding out from them. So, you know, we've got a very, a really good system at TABMA where, you know, even in the beginning of the pipeline at that interview stage, we do check in with candidates regularly just to make sure that they're still looking for work and that they feel like they've got enough information. Because often the case too, the people that we're interviewing, we find they might not be quite ready to start their apprenticeship or traineeship because they might still be at school, for example. So it's about keeping them warm and engaged as much as possible. Alrighty, so I'll just touch base a little bit about our School Leavers campaign. And this is something Pete, myself and our GTO team has worked really hard on this year especially. So what we've been doing to attract school leavers into the timber and hardware industry is a social media campaign. Like I said, we have a very active social media calendar. We tend to post, you know, at least once a day on business days, and even sometimes more than that. And that's a mixture of things. So that could be positions that we have available, career spotlights, so, you know, talking about the formal qualifications, video clips with our apprentices and trainees to talk about their successes, and just other information that we feel will be very useful for, you know, school students, their parents, their teachers. And we do contact career advisors regularly. So, you know, we're always on the lookout for people, and we know that there's a lot of competition out there. And, you know, we've got lots of different big companies and groups contacting career advisors. But, you know, I like to think that our friendliness and our helpfulness means they do come to us as well, which is fantastic to see. So. Alrighty, so I guess the message I want to leave everyone with today is be patient but act quickly. And I say that because, you know, the reality is there definitely is a candidate shortage at the moment. There is so much opportunity out there for young people that I think a lot of them are quite confused. You know, do I go to university? Do I do an apprenticeship traineeship? Do I go backpacking for a year? There's so much opportunity now that I think a lot of young people find themselves quite confused with what they want to do. But when we do find that young person and they seem enthusiastic and interested, I do say, please act quickly. You know, times have changed. Once upon a time ago, you'd see an ad in the newspaper, you would go down and drop your resume off, and then, you know, you would wait for a letter in the mail to say you've been invited in for an interview, and then you'd wait for another letter to let you know if you've been successful. These days, people can apply for 100 jobs within an hour. It's just a totally different market, and it just means that it's, you know, employers have to act quickly when they do find that right person now. So please, if you've got any concerns or if you're not sure about anything, make sure you contact us as soon as possible once you've interviewed that good young person, so we can help you with that decision making. All right, that's it for me. Thanks, everyone.
Excellent. Thanks, Kat. This must be an exciting time for the recruitment team with the Year 12 school leavers starting to apply for jobs too.
Absolutely. It's fantastic. You know, I just love when you just see young people who are just finishing their school and they are considering vocational education as the right choice for them. You know, I've met so many people in my years where they've started university, it wasn't for them, and they've ended up with a massive HECS debt and no degree. So the fantastic thing about VET is that, you know, in the grand scheme of things, a traineeship's 1 to 2 years, apprenticeship's 3 to 4 years. Yes, you can further your education afterwards, but it's just such a great way to start learning from day one. So.
Excellent. See, I told everyone she's passionate. Excellent. Well, thanks, Kat. Now we're going to head back to Pete, and he's going to talk about a very important topic, which is what government funding is available out there for employers.
Thanks, Alicia. So the federal government recognised as we went through the whole COVID thing last year, and this is even before what we've been through this year, that the market had changed as a result of the COVID lockdowns, that there was all sorts of wide-ranging issues in the job market and in industry. So the federal government put together what they called the Boosting Apprenticeships Commencements Program, and it's a great initiative. It's the best I've seen in my 20+ years in the industry, and I think it's an initiative that if you're looking to employ or take on an apprentice or trainee, not really sure about timeframes, now's the time to really consider it, because financially it's well and truly worth it. I will, I guess, preface all of this with a comment that taking on an apprentice or trainee should not be driven by financial decisions. It should be driven by the necessity or desire to train people into your business. But let's face it, some financial incentive is very nice and goes well with it. So, boosting apprenticeship commencements was brought out by the government October last year, and most recently it's been followed up with continuing apprenticeship commencements. So we shortened them to BAC and CAC. Doesn't sound particularly attractive, I know, but makes it easier to say. So what are they? Okay, so the Boosting Apprenticeship Commencements, or BAC, is a 50% subsidy on the wages of the apprentice or trainee in the first year, up to a maximum of $7,000 per quarter. So that's up to $28,000 in that first year that the government will subsidise of the apprentice or trainee's wage, depending on what they get paid. So it's 50% or up to a maximum of $7,000. It's paid in arrears, as everyone who's been involved in the funding so far can attest to. The government is a little bit slow in paying, but it certainly does come through, and TABMA give 100% of the funding back to our host employers through a credit to their account. So that funding is available right now, and it takes effect from the day the apprentice or trainee commences. CAC funding, continuing apprenticeship commencements, that's for trainees or apprentices whose qualification is more than 12 months. So there's some traineeships that are 18 months or 2 years, and most apprenticeships are 3 or 4 years. What is the funding? Well, essentially it's 10% of the wage paid in the second year, up to a maximum of $1,500 per quarter, and in the third year, 5% of the wage is subsidised up to a maximum of $750 per quarter. So again, it's not to be sneezed at. It's attractive funding. All up, that means for a 2-year apprenticeship, traineeship, sorry. Let's take it as an example. One of my favourite traineeships, the Certificate 3 in Timber Frame Design. It's my favourite because it involves computers and all sorts of wonderful drawings, and I think the people who do it are just absolutely amazing. The total funding that could be available is up to $34,000 for the 2 years. So that's pretty attractive, and as I said, that's paid back by TABMA to the host employer. It is subject to a government eligibility assessment and subject to the trainee's full gross remuneration. But as anybody who has been involved in receiving this funding will attest to, it's certainly valuable. So the BAC funding is available up until 30th of March next year. The apprentice or trainee simply has to commence before that date, and then it's available for 12 months. The CAC funding comes into effect after that 12 months for the second 12 months, and if relevant, for the third 12 months. I know I've gone through that really quickly, and I am more than happy to either answer questions here or take calls anytime from any prospective host employers or current host employers and explain that that funding model. But it's something that I think It's long overdue from the government, and it's really attractive. And let's get some apprentice or trainees commenced and start building those skills in the industries.
Excellent. Thanks, Pete. And just to reiterate, TABMA handing it 100% back. We're just finalising our annual report, and last financial year, TABMA handed back $1.5 million in government incentives to our host employers. So that's
fantastic.
Really exciting for the industry. Excellent. All right. Well, next we have Darren, and we're going to hear why his role is important in the process of our TABMA trainees and apprentices, and especially when it comes to the welfare of young people. Thanks, Darren.
Thanks, Alicia. Just going to share my screen. So being a field officer in Queensland is quite interesting. There's plenty of challenges with young people, and they attribute to a lot of things. COVID is probably one of the biggest things at the moment, but I'll just go through our slide. Once a successful candidate is employed with TABMA Apprentices and Trainees, we provide them with a field officer. The field officer will provide mentoring to the apprentice, the trainee, and host employer for the full duration of their employment. So from start to beginning, we have contact with the apprentice trainee. I'm involved even in some of the recruitment with CAT, setting up interviews and those type of things, and talking to the host. So from the start right through to the completion. The initiative behind this support is to assist the apprentice or trainee in dealing with any issues that may arise during their training period, and at the same time help the apprentice or trainee to achieve their training and personal goals. So some of the issues around young apprentices at the moment is very varied. So from just starting to get into the workforce, leaving school, some of the young people still live at home with mum and dad. So it's a bit of a break in every day today, going to school and then getting into the work environment is very different. So there is challenges right from the outset. The field officer will schedule a meet with the apprentice and trainee and host employer to complete items such as, so we are there to get them work ready, provide them some standard personal protective equipment. This varies from host to host. So some hosts need different safety equipment to others, but generally we give them boots, shorts, vests, or high-vis protective equipment, or we reimburse them if they go out and decide to buy a pair of boots themselves. So, yeah, that's just very host specific around the PPE. We discuss current training modules and relay TAFE RTO feedback. So when we meet with a host and the apprentice, we discuss what training they're going to be doing and what apprenticeship, traineeship they're going to be doing. And then we find an RTO or a TAFE, and then we engage them. And then from there, we're going to sort out what units they're going to choose in the workplace that's best suited. And also around the TAFE and the RTO, if you've got specialised apprenticeships like wood machining, some of the TAFEs don't deliver this. So we've got to find a TAFE that delivers it. We've got to find a close TAFE if somewhere close to home or close to the workplace. And if not, we've got to, find out travel arrangements and accommodation if they've got to stay away from home. So there could be a bit involved in finding the right TAFE and the right teacher for them. Answering timesheet and training related questions. So this happens every Monday morning. I'll get messages from our payroll to say that Joe Blow's timesheet's not in, and we'll just generally chase them up. But we also got to go through and we have apprentices that travel to and from work, so they might be putting in travel claims. So we help them out with that sort of stuff. And other things in timesheets, if they're going to have leave, put in for personal leave coming up to Christmas and sick days, all that type of thing, we help them out with and work with our payroll department. And we also work with the host supervisor to make sure that any information that's in the timesheets put in there correctly. Discuss and follow up on current and previous goals. So this could be around a trainee that started out in the timber product and knowledge traineeship, just for an example. and they might just start off picking and packing, but one of their goals might be to, get on a forklift in a couple of months, or they might be out there and they might see someone else in the workplace docking timber or working on a saw, and one of their goals is to progress through the traineeship, and that's what they might want to do next. So we work with the host employer to try and get them through and reach their goals and meet their training at the same time. With the performance assessments, so with the performance assessments, I try and keep an eye on their TAFE, and we discuss that at our monitoring visits, which I'll touch on later on. But mainly what they learn at TAFE and at RTOs, make sure they're implementing their units into the workforce. So when they're going to work, what they're learning off the job, they're putting on the job, and we'll just keep an eye on that and make sure they keep progressing and their performance gets better. What is mentoring? So we ensure our apprentices and trainees get the most from their on-the-job training, which is when they're out on site and through face-to-face performance assessments. The host employer and the apprentice or trainee will complete a written feedback assessment, which is the monitoring review that I spoke about, based around the apprentice or trainee overall on-the-job performance. So the monitoring visit covers off on a lot of stuff, but essentially it's about how the trainee or apprentice is going in the workplace, how he's going at work, has he got any issues, has the host got any issues, and then feedback from the host about performance, punctuality, and any other things that they want to talk about on the day. So overall performance, the host will give me feedback about how they are, how they're going in the workplace. I also get feedback from the trainee or apprentice about how they think they're going and if they're up to speed. And if there's any issues there, the field officer steps in and, we pull the apprentice or trainee aside and give them good feedback or negative feedback and work on the issues if there is any, and try to overcome those in the workplace and keep them communicating with their supervisor in the workplace and moving forward. Attitude and communication, some of the issues around that I have to deal with. Kids on their phones is one of the big ones. And I'm not sure why, but the younger generation find it very hard to communicate in the workplace. They just won't speak up. So a lot of them, if they have an issue or they're struggling with something, they tend to come to their field officer before they'll go to their supervisor. And then in that sense, I'll take it to the host, to the supervisor, and discuss it with them, and hopefully we can get a good outcome from that. And all these performance monitoring reviews, they're all documented and they're signed by the apprentice or trainee and also signed off by the host supervisor. So it's all there that we can go back on at the end of the year. If there's an issue that has continued, we can always go back and look these up on our system. Workplace environment. One of the issues with the workplace environment could be bullying that we have to sort out. Also, the apprentice or trainees might come to us that the kitchens are dirty or they haven't got a fridge, or just little things that these supervisors and your host employers just might not think of. They come to us with some extraordinary complaints sometimes, so we just got to deal with it. And usually there's no issue with that. We just take it to the supervisor and mediate. And in our monitoring reviews, it's pretty good. A lot of the time we do the monitoring reviews with the host supervisor, and our trainee apprentice is, they sit in on the same review. So I will sit down, just for instance, with Glen and talk to him about his trainee while the trainee is there. And usually we sort anything out there on the spot. We can talk about it and go through any issues together. But sometimes if it gets a bit toxic, we do them separate, and we have to sort them out a little bit later on down the track. And when I say that, like, we don't do it then, but we might focus on it when he's back into the work floor, when he's back down on the work floor. So moving over to safety, making sure that the environment they're working in is safe, making sure that they know where first aid kits are, if they're working on any machinery that they have been signed off on safe working procedures, and making sure that we view those and talk to the supervisor about making sure that they're put through them. And also making sure that they're wearing the correct safety equipment. So if they need to wear a earmuffs or protective glasses, making sure that they wear them all the time in the workplace and getting feedback around that. So if a supervisor lets me know that Joe Blow doesn't wear his glasses or his earmuffs when he's working on a saw, I'll bring that up, and if it has to, it'll go to a written warning just to make sure that we're serious about safety and it just can't continue in the workplace. Talking about any skills gaps, I think that to me relates a lot to young apprentices. I've had a few lately that have come out of school grade 8, grade 9, and when they're going into training, they need to do an LLN assessment with their RTO or TAFE, which is a numeracy and literacy assessment, and their skills might not be up to scratch with that. So if that's the case, we give them a hand with that. They do the numeracy and literacy test, but if there's a skill shortage there, we work with the RTO and the host supervisor to really make it work and get them through their training. And if they need any special assistance, we work on that as well. So some of the young youth that I work with at the moment might have a youth program that they're connected to, and we talk to their case supervisor and get assistance from them as well if we can. Personal opportunities, goals and overcoming challenges. So to me, personal opportunities is in the workplace. We try and promote them. If they're doing a traineeship, we try and promote them up through the business into a Cert 4, working with the host supervisor to promote them and make sure they get through their qualification and then roll into the next qualification. And that might be, as we touched on before, if they're in timber product supply, they might want to go into safety, Cert 4, they might want to go into sales, or they might want to go into like a sales rep role. And we just try and direct them in the right path and give them all the support they can and roll them into a Cert 4 when that time comes. Overcoming challenges. I'll touch on one of the challenges just for an example that I've had lately. We had a young guy that was, he's an electrician, and he was really struggling with the host employer that he was working with, and just struggling with the TAFE, struggling a little bit with on-the-job learning, and they were just a little bit worried about if he was really cut out to be an electrician. But I got involved, spoke to the apprentice and spoke to the supervisor, and the supervisor couldn't give him enough raps. He turns up on time, he'd done his job, did whatever he was asked to do. It was just the learning difficulties that he had. So what we agreed to do before just going, you're not cut out for it and we're going to put you off, or the host is going to hand him back, we decided to do a little bit of rotation, and we put him with a few different supervisors. And we found us through feedback that one of the supervisors he was with was one of those supervisors that just wanted to get in there and be hands-on. So he did a lot of standing around, not so much on the job learning. And when we rotated him, he got with a supervisor that put him in there, made him do the work, and sat back and watched. And he picked it up, and they couldn't be any more happier with him at the moment. He's just going great guns, and he's about to do his capstone at the end of the year. So it just shows that having a field officer out there and working with the host and the apprentice or trainee, we can get some great outcomes. So that's all from me, Alicia. I just wanted to touch on that.
Excellent. Thanks, Darren. And our trainees and apprentices are lucky to have a mentor who can help them get to that finish line instead of, if there's issues like that, just giving up. So thanks very much. Now, I know we are running a little behind time. Understand if you have to leave, but if you can bear with us, that's fantastic, because the next person we're going to talk to is David Hennessy, who is our trainee who has just completed his dual traineeship. And Pete's going to ask me a few questions.
I am. Are you there, David?
Yes, I am.
Oh, wonderful. We can't see you. You're obviously on a phone, but thank you for joining us this afternoon. Hey, David, you've finished your 2 qualifications now. I'm correct in saying that, aren't I?
Yep.
Yep. So you started with Simmonds. What was the first qualification that you went through?
Certificate 3 in timber merchandising.
Yep. And that gave you a really good understanding of the timber industry and the business and how it all works, didn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And what did that lead into then, David?
Then I was pretty much asked at the end of the traineeship if I wanted to continue on, go the extra mile, which I did. And that's when TABMA sort of kickstarted a whole new certificate for me in leadership and management.
Mm-hmm. And how did that go?
That was good as well. It was slightly shorter, but it was just as rewarding.
Yep. So going from the timber merchandising to leadership and management, did that flow for you and build on your skill base?
Yeah, definitely. It definitely underpinned everything I was doing at work as much as the first course was.
Mm-hmm. And that's probably also why you were nominated as a finalist in the TABMA Trainee of the Year Awards.
Yeah, I hope so.
I'm sure it was. What are you doing now, David?
Now I'm the warehouse manager at Simmonds Lumber.
Wonderful. So that's it's really boosted your career fairly quickly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I hear that Glen's getting a little bit nervous about his position and the possibility of having to early retire to make way for you.
I would be too.
Good on you, David. Hey, thanks for joining us this afternoon. You're testament to what the traineeships can do. Just one last question. In terms of having done your traineeships through TABMA, how did that help you?
It was probably the best way to go if you're looking to start work in this sort of industry. Just the way they guide you and the way they support you throughout your training and everything. It's definitely, the way to go.
Yeah, sounds good. If you can, David, stick around in case there's any questions from anyone directed to you, would you?
Yep, no worries.
Thank you, and thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, David. You truly are a success story, and it's great to hear from you. And it's also great to know that we've got young, passionate people who are coming through the industry, and also we've got some great employers who are promoting training and encourage careers for these young people too. So with success stories like Glen and David, I'm sure you're all wanting to know what the process is to employ a young person in your business, and we're going to hear from Pete again.
You're hearing too much from me this afternoon. So I'll take you through the process real quick. I think one of the things that I'd just like to touch on just real quickly with you is that there's a lot of questions as to what is the benefit of a formal qualification when the qualification is not necessary to do the job. And I like to touch on that from the two aspects. One is that formal accredited qualifications like the Certificate 3 in Building Product Supply, or used to be Timber Merchandising that David did, or Frame and Truss Manufacture, the training's delivered by people who've had vast experience in the industry, and the training program itself is designed to maximize the skills development and the knowledge retention within that industry. And as with David, by going through a course like that, the knowledge is I guess given to the young person in a logical fashion, that they're going to retain that knowledge and skill development in a more refined fashion than if they're just taught on the job. And so many industries have now moved across to formal qualifications and the necessity of formal qualifications to do the work as a result of that. The second aspect to it is that young people today are looking for formal qualifications. It's become part of the younger generation's way of living, I guess, to a certain extent, that they look for these qualifications. And if they do a Certificate 3 and then a Certificate 4, that makes way to a diploma, that makes way to a bachelor's degree, which makes way to higher qualifications. And because of Australia's unique qualifications framework, there's stepping stones from one to the other. And it means that all the way along that they get credit for what they've already completed. And it's very different to when people at my age went through our start into industry. So how do we assist, and what process do we take you through for that? Well, if you're thinking of adding a trainee or apprentice to your business, talk to us. Give myself a call, give Alicia a call, give Kat a call. Our numbers are on our website, or at the end of this, we'll give you the 1-800 number. But don't hesitate to ring any one of us and talk about what your needs are. Once you've decided that you want to move forward, we ask you to fill in a job order and sign off on a proposal, and our recruitment team, Kat and Bianca, take over, and they'll do their thing. They'll find the person for you. They'll then refer a suitable young person to you, and invite you to interview them. Once you've selected a young person, we commence the actual traineeship or apprenticeship. Darren and his colleagues, they'll do all the paperwork, they'll make all the arrangements, and they'll make sure that everything is set up as it needs to be by the state training authorities' requirements. And then we work with you through that apprenticeship and traineeship, providing the mentoring and whatever necessary. I'm not sure if David can actually see the visual on the screen, but there's a picture of him on the screen there. The handsome gentleman to the right of the boxes there, next to number 3 and 5. So we take you through that whole, and the apprentice and trainee through that whole mentoring process. So it's simple. It's easy. We make it as easy as possible. We take all the hassle out of it, and we have a much higher completion rate than direct employment does statistically. And happy to talk to anyone about this. Group training organisations have somewhere between a 55 and 60% completion rate. Direct employment is sub 50%. So through what we do, we achieve a higher completion rate for the apprentices and trainees, and we do everything possible to make sure that they succeed. And I will stop talking there, Alicia.
No, that's great. Thanks very much, Pete. I know over the years, some of our employers have been nervous to try the GTO model, and sometimes it's been out of necessity because they just can't find somebody. And once they do it, the comment is always, why didn't I try this earlier? So yeah, great job that everybody does. Now that wraps up all our information from our panelists. Thanks to everyone for giving up your time to listen to how the model group training works and why it could possibly fit into your business. Thanks very much, everybody.